Hi everyone, today we'll be presenting our group research project on ecological succession in Point Pleasant Park after Hurricane Juan. My name is Lily and I am presenting with Luke and Rowan for File 2060.
Point Pleasant Park is an urban Acadian forest in the south end of Halifax, Nova Scotia, with both coniferous and deciduous trees. The park is highly diverse following the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, where moderate human activity and coastal effects maintain high species diversity. On September 29, 2003, Hurricane Juan, a Category 2 storm with wind gusts up to 185 kilometers per hour, destroyed about 70% of the tree canopy. The forest is recovering through secondary succession since the disturbance did not alter the soil and tree species are recolonizing the area. From 2004 to 2025, data was collected annually. Total tree density was measured using diameter at breast height. Dominant species densities were recorded for red spruce in 2004 and red maple in 2025. And species diversity was measured using Shannon diversity in H. Point Pleasant Park also has historical significance as a traditional spiritual gathering site for the Mi'kmaq Nation, known as Amdugadi. Data trends presented in our study aligns with other literature showing that land abandonment allows natural regeneration and forest structural recovery within about 40 years.
Question 1 asks, how and why has the overall forest community changed over time? As well, what can we predict will happen to the overall community as the forest moves towards its climax community and why? I chose to analyze the metric of total density because it provides a straightforward measure of how many trees are located per unit area and how this may have changed since the disturbance. Total density is a strong indicator of the overall forest community and gives insight into recovery patterns. That being said, our objective is to quantify how Hurricane Juan has changed the total density in Point Pleasant Park Forest to better understand the forest succession trajectory toward a climax community. Our null hypothesis is that there is no significant relationship between the total density and year, and our alternative hypothesis is that there is a significant positive relationship between total density and year.
In question 2, we want to know how has the density of the dominant species in 2004, red spruce, as well as the dominant species in 2025, red maple, changed over time? Also, what will happen to the dominant species as the forest moves towards its climax community? Our objective is to examine the changes in density of the two dominant species in Point Pleasant Park from 2004 to 2025, identify how both species densities changed in relation to each other, and based on those trends, determine how those species densities will change as it reaches a climax Acadian forest. Our null hypothesis is that there is no significant relationship between year and the density of the species red spruce or red maple, while our alternative hypothesis is that there is a significant positive relationship between year and the density of the species red spruce and red maple from 2004 to 2025.
Research question 3 wants to measure how a chosen community metric has changed over time and how it will continue to change in the future. The objectives of this question are to analyze overall species diversity in Point Pleasant Park from 2004 to 2025 using Shannon diversity as our chosen community metric, as well as to predict how diversity will continue to progress in the coming years. We will also determine the driving forces for the results measured. Our null hypothesis states the Shannon Diversity Index for Point Pleasant Park has shown no significant change from 2004 to 2025, while our alternative hypothesis states the Shannon Diversity Index for Point Pleasant Park has shown a significant increase from 2004 to 2025.
In the study, 6 20 by 20 meter plots in Point Pleasant Park, or Amdugadi, Halifax, Nova Scotia, were selected because they experienced high impact from Hurricane Juan in 2003. They were selected to examine long-term forest recovery and secondary succession following severe canopy disturbance. All living trees with a diameter at breast height, or DBH, of 2.5 centimeters or greater were measured at 4.5 feet above the ground, and species were identified using a standard field guide. DBH was used to measure because it allows us to estimate wood volume and compare results with both scientific and industry data. For each year from 2004 to 2025, the density of each species was recorded in terms of trees per 400 square meters, with missing years 2005, 2007, 2016, and 2020 due to external factors. Linear regression was the most appropriate method because it directly models change over time, allowing trends in succession or species dominance in the park to be quantified, including the rate of change in density and the statistical significance of these trends.
A linear regression was created to examine the relationship between total density and time in years since disturbance. As seen in Figure 1, the regression shows a statistically significant relationship between total density and year. The total density significantly increased over time, rising by an average of 4.93 individuals per 400 meters squared each year, indicating a positive linear relationship between the total density and year. Therefore, we rejected the null hypothesis that there is no significant relationship between the two. Hurricane Juan has caused a significant loss in forest canopy cover. The massive loss of coverage for the ground completely disrupts the ecosystem balances and processes below the trees. Using the results presented in Figure 1, we can further understand the succession trajectory toward a climax community. Initially, the light availability greatly increases in exposure of the understory, inviting pioneer species to initiate ecological succession. Pioneer species, such as mosses, fungi, and bacteria, begin to improve the habitat by increasing soil quality through the decomposition of organic matter and other nutrients. Ultimately, they build a more stable environment by allowing more individuals to establish, increasing total density, and helping in recovery. In this scenario, secondary succession is being observed, as a natural disaster acts as the disturbance. Although not observed in Figure 1, it is predicted the forest will naturally be able to recover. As the forest approaches its climax community, self-thinning or the decrease in density of individuals can be expected. The slope of the density increase shows significant increase, but will eventually slow and begin to stabilize as competition for resources such as light, water, nutrients, and space rises.
For red maple, or Acer rubrum, we tested how its density changed over time in Point Pleasant Park following Hurricane Juan, 2003. Yearly tree density data in trees per 400 meters squared from 2004 to 2025 were analyzed using linear regression, and the results are shown in Figure 2. The analysis revealed that red maple density increased over time with a slope of 2.24 18 trees per 400 meters squared per year, and a regression R-squared of 0.135 and a p-value of 0.0003. Because the p-value is below 0.05, the null hypothesis is rejected, indicating that red maple density increased significantly over this period. For red spruce, or Picea rubens, we tested how its density changed over time in Point Pleasant Park following Hurricane Juan, 2003. Yearly tree density data in trees per 400 meters squared from 2004 to 2025 were analyzed using linear regression, and the results are shown in Figure 3. The analysis revealed that red spruce density increased over time, with a slope of 0.3475 trees per 400 meters squared per year, and a regression R-squared of 0.131 and a p-value of 0.0004. Because the p-value is below 0.05, the null hypothesis is rejected, indicating that red spruce density increased significantly over this period. From these two graphs, we can see how the densities of red spruce and red maple trees change over time. In 2004, red spruce was the dominant species, but its density increased slowly, with a slope of 0.3475 trees per 400 meters squares per year. Red maple became the dominant species by 2025 because its density increased much faster at a slope of 2.24 18 trees per 400 meters squared per year. Why did these changes occur? The R-square values for both regressions were low, meaning that year alone only explains a small portion of the changes in tree densities. Ecologically, red maple can exploit canopy gaps created by disturbances such as hurricanes, while red spruce is slower to react and more sensitive to disturbance. Red maple also has a high reproductive rate and faster seedling establishment, allowing it to quickly take advantage of resources made available after a disturbance. These traits make red maple a gap opportunist, while red spruce is less opportunistic. In the future, red maple is likely to continue outpacing red spruce, as fast-growing opportunistic species dominate in growth in the forest. However, as canopy gaps close and competition for resources increases, the density growth of both species is expected to slow. This aligns with succession theory, where gap opportunists like red maple grow rapidly early on, but eventually slow as the forest moves towards a more mature closed canopy stage.
To determine how the community metric of Point Pleasant Park changed over time in years after Hurricane Juan made landfall, Shannon diversity values were measured from 2004 to 2025 and plotted into a linear regression analysis. As seen in Figure 4 and the results of our statistical test, an overall increase from 2004 to 2025 of H was recorded. There was a significant positive relationship between H and years, demonstrating that as time goes on, species diversity increases. As a result, we reject our null hypothesis that the Shannon Diversity Index of Point Pleasant Park has shown no significant change from 2004 to 2025 in favor of our alternative hypothesis. There is an overall significant increase in H between 2004 and 2025, indicating that the chosen community metric has changed over time. We see secondary succession occurring as H is low in the years directly following the disturbance of Hurricane Juan, but as time goes on, we see H gradually increasing till it is now almost 1.5 times the value it was in 2004. This positive relationship of H and time is supported with past research viewing an increase in tree species diversity occurring during secondary succession. The reason for an increase in diversity after secondary succession is due to more efficient occupation of different strata in the forest, creating a multi-layered canopy. Hurricane Juan was able to destroy the old uniform canopy, leading to low species diversity directly after the disturbance, which freed space for more species to grow, leading to an increase in species diversity after several years. Predictions state that species diversity will follow a saturating pattern, where it continues to increase over time till the community stabilizes, leading to a plateau in H that would occur in the late stages of secondary succession.
Figure 1 shows increasing density beginning to slow but has yet to plateau. This suggests competition is beginning to intensify, a characteristic of the mid-successional stage. Alongside total density, mid-succession is supported by the significant increases in red maple and red spruce densities. These findings indicate the development of intermediate and shade-tolerant species. Finally, the increasing Shannon diversity indicates the overall biodiversity rising and becoming more stable. As Point Pleasant Park is an urban park, human disturbance can be a concern. For instance, soil compaction and maintenance trail clearing can modify the natural processes of succession. The phrase "msit no gama" means the interconnectedness of everything, which is a reminder to us to be mindful of our actions and the broader implications they may have on our surroundings.
We would like to acknowledge our lab instructor, Dr. Joanna Zaguris, our demonstrator and teaching assistant, Jovia Gallant, and our lab group, which includes Lily MacNutt, Luke Lavine, and myself, Rowan McNeil. We'd also like to thank all the Biology 2060 ecology students from 2004 to 2025 who collected the tree density data that made this study possible. Finally, we acknowledge that our study took place on the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq Nation, known as Amdugadi, and we respect their stewardship and ecological knowledge of the area.